Hello, welcome to the Cellar for the 366th time. I kind of find that number weird too. Anyway, let's go right to it, shall we? Before I start, it always, when you have a tool or an item that you use, and you use it for a long, long time, and then it finally gives out, and you go to get another one, and you can't. They don't make the item anymore. Now, I haven't had it a long, long time, 12, 14 years maybe, and it's made by a reputable company, a big company, but they just made a different one. I got to look through their whole damn catalog to see if they made one that does what that one did. All right. Private gripe aside. I had to laugh when you said I went in the Navy. We didn't read comic books in the Navy. My dad was in the Navy, Pacific Theater, World War II. He referred to reading comic books as studying for chief. Yeah, my dad was in World War II in the Pacific too. And they had several very, very derogatory terms that some of which were still in use when I was in a particularly long stay in the stall was referred to as giving birth to a chief, but that was a long time ago. Studying for chief. Yeah, okay. I can appreciate the humor there. Maglubliet is the god of goblins and hobgoblins from deities and demigods. Okay. I didn't have anything to do with deities and demigods. That was a hardbound that came out after gods, demigods, and heroes. So I was not privy to that, and to be quite honest, probably didn't give a shit if I did ever read it. What is the word Navy short for? Answer, never again volunteer yourself. Well, my dad, who was a CB in the Pacific during the Second World War, told me the best advice he could give me is don't volunteer. And I could see that in the general sense of don't stick your neck out for something you don't understand. But I actually found several times that if you scoped out what you knew they were going to be asking for volunteers for, sometimes you could find yourself a nice tasty role. When I was in boot camp, they needed a male petty officer. And they said, we need somebody with postal experience. And I said, okay. Because I knew that I got to go down to the mail room in the barracks every evening and sit down there and drink an RC and smoke for 10 or 15 minutes before I had to be back up into the bay. So that was a good job. That was a very good job. And I volunteered for it. And it got me an extra recruit stripe. I was a third class. I was no longer just a puke. Not that it really gave me any perks, because it didn't. But, it was what it was. Were you on submarines by any chance, or were you on a target? I was on a big goddamn target. It was called the USS Ranger, a Forrestal class aircraft carrier. Big, slow, and ours was slow and stupid. We had 4 screws. We drug one, and one of the other shafts was warped. So at best, we could get 3 screws going, and the whole back end of the ship went whoom, 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 because of that warped shaft. Yeah, it was a target, all right. I worked on the flight deck. I was in for only 6 years myself. Only 6? Shit, I was 4-year active and 2-year inactive because there wasn't a naval air station close enough that they could make me drive to it for 2 years. MM2 SS Elt Nuke. Oh, well, some of that shit I don't understand. Motor machinist mate second I got. And the SS part I don't know, unless that's something to do with subs in particular. And Nuke was on the George C. Marshall and Salt Lake City. Always fun to find and talk to older sub guys, even surface guys. Well, fuck you, even surface guys. Was an entertaining way to live, and I have a lot of stories, but I do not miss it. Still have dreams once in a while where I found I'd have to go back into the Navy and have to see on a sub again. Yeah, that would be a bad dream. Though I did know that during the 70s and late 70s, 80s, into the 90s, that every boomer sub in the blue and the gold sections on the East Coast had a D&D game that stayed on the boat and was kept in a certain place where the other crew knew where it was. And so we were there down deep with the rest of the fleet. Yeah, every once in a while, and it hasn't happened for a few years, I wake up out of a dead sleep thinking I heard the arresting gear. The bunk I slept in was over a big metal steel box about this square, through which ran the arresting cable that was to the number 3 wire up above, which was one deck up from where my cabin was, or my compartment was. We were crammed into a boat with way more sailors than there were bunks originally designed for it. And I ended up working flight ops because the compartment that I was in was unlivable if they were making recoveries, because that great big steel cable went whistling down this big steel pipe inside that big metal box and made the most god-awful. It was such a loud, awful sign that when I was making recordings, it would just cut it off. The tape recorder I had at the time just couldn't deal with it. And I would wake up thinking I just heard that. But that hasn't been for a while. It's amusing to hear one of the questioners recommend the deed of Paxenarion for ideas for playing D&D. This story in the first book is partly derived from the author's own playing D&D experiences. Indeed, with you read it with that in mind, you can recognize bits from the village of Hamlet appearing under different names. Well, okay, hey, wherever you get your material. If it's a good read, it's a good read, and I don't care where you got it as long as you didn't steal it from somebody else. Damn, I've heard of that. Psionics derived partly from Steve Marsh's attempts to write a Hindu mystic yogi class, which then you and Gary transformed into a generic system for any class. But how often did anyone use it in play? Okay, I don't know anything about Steve, who I consider a very good friend and would never steal from. I always gave him full credit in everything we published that he did. I have no idea about his Hindu stuff. To my knowledge, Psionics came from my pestering Gary for fully a year that the Mind Flare was a game breaker. That there was no possible defense against their critical weapon. And I nagged on him and nagged on him and nagged on him. And the Brain Mole and Thought Eater and all those were just, they were game enders. They weren't game changers. They ended the game. And so finally he said, fine. And so the rest is, as I've told many times, supposed to be something that a very, very tiny population of possible adventurers might possibly have, something that might possibly be developed. And of course, within 12 weeks, everybody in the D&D world was psionic, as often happened back then. I don't know. I made it as a skill ability that you might have. Didn't matter if you were a fighter or a cleric or whatever. It was just a teensy-weensy little possibility that you might have some innate psionic ability. But as it was often the case back then, everybody jumped on that bandwagon, and pretty soon everybody had psionics. How often did anyone use it in play? Well, it's not something that you use every day. Psionics isn't, until you become a very high-level adept, psionics isn't an offensive weapon. Psionics is a defensive weapon to be utilized against those foes that have a means of combating you that psionics can shield you from. How often was it used? I don't know. I heard more people moaning and groaning and carrying on about how complex it was and how, yeah. And I just kept saying, hey, it was just there, out there, thrown out there. Maybe somebody has this ability. Maybe. I like the idea of creating my own monsters, but I still use orcs when I want. However, I make them pretty clearly not the normal orcs. These are the deep orcs of Moria, and they have a bunch of priests and fire magic, etc. Many have flame shooting from the tops of their helmets. Yes, that is stolen from the Free League Moria module, which is worth the price just for the maps. Make it clear from the beginning these aren't normal, so there is both more interest and you have a foreshadowing of the danger. I always foreshadow the danger in traps, etc. That is, there are burn or old blood marks and some bones near a trap. I don't roll a d6 or d20 and oops, you're dead type traps. It's like the DM is playing by himself. If magic, all right, I'm going to read his whole thing here and then we'll go back piece by piece. If the monsters happen to have a magic item, then they use it if they are at all intelligent. Even if it's something like a dragon who couldn't use a magic sword, then the cultist priests who worship the dragon will grab the magic item when the dragon is under attack. Okay, absolutely I believe in both beefing up and slimming down monsters. Beefing up so that they are not what you thought they were. They do not, they're different. They're more potent. Or dumbing down. Oh, yeah, you were lucky you ran into a couple of ogres that had already been badly beaten up or hadn't been successful hunting in a while or, whatever. And, wow, one or two good strokes and you just killed that ogre. That's not usual. And then afterwards, if you examine the body, yeah, it's skinny, gaunt, it looks emaciated, or it's got a festering wound on its butt, whatever. Sure, do them both ways. Especially when you take a big badass and make it 40% depleted when they run into it and just scare the shit out of them. And then, hey, they feel great about themselves if they manage to defeat it. The fact that it was 40% beat up doesn't mean jack. It was whatever it was. So I absolutely believe in tinkering. As for traps, well, I have a slightly different. I believe that the players and this is the players, plural, absolute first their first directive is to gather information. You cannot do a successful adventure as players if you just blunder along, because eventually you will blunder yourself to death. Gather information. Gathering information means checking for traps, checking for secret doors, watching to see if corridors slope any at all. A tiny slope over a long enough distance, and hell's bells, you're 8 feet below where you started out. I believe that traps are there to keep them honest. Now, I won't put, as with traps, the less lethal ones I make easier to find. The more lethal ones are capable of being found. And a couple of the less lethal ones, because nobody looked, will generally put the party on their toes. Nothing like a cloud of arrows poofing out of the wall, or better yet, little blowgun darts all coming out of a pretty picture on the temple wall you were all standing there admiring like morons. And all these little darts come out. Yeah. They don't have to be lethal, but they can damn sure shake up the party. And as far as magic use by monsters, items, I certainly, it's what's justifiable by logic, even the logic that you apply in fantasy role-playing. I can certainly see having a semi-intelligent beast wearing something around its neck because it makes it feel stronger, makes it feel better. And it's a buff of some sort. You can find, you can't find the dragon that can use the sword between its thumbnails. That doesn't work. But you can find other things that are plausible. And hey, in fantasy, plausible is a big word. Encompasses a lot. The shop you didn't know about was the Capstone. Yes, it was. That was their name. I have a minor amount of Shawnee blood. I feel like almost all fake Native Americans claim Cherokee blood, though. Never understood why. Maybe the Jeep Cherokee is the only native they know. I have read in my studies that the Cherokee were considered civilized Indians compared to, say, the Lakota on the plains, and that they assimilated more easily into farming and what have you, which, let's face it, lots of Native Americans farmed before the white man ever showed up. And that they may have indeed intermarried with Caucasian stock, wrong word, European stock, sorry, don't mean to upset anybody, with European people, and therefore their bloodlines go way the hell back, and it may be a very fine line, but if it's traceable, it's legit. Maybe I don't know about how many fake ones. I don't know who's been proven and disproven, whatever. But from what I have read, from the histories I have read, there could have been much more intermarriage, and therefore much more of spreading the blood. Now, see, I live in the hometown of, or the home area of the Shawnee. And there was, the old saying goes, very little love lost between the settlers and the Shawnee. Okay, what's next? Okay, here's a weird one, but hey, if I have an answer, I'm always willing to deal with it. Not sure if you have this information, but you are a wise and venerable curmudgeon. In cowboy films, there's a metal jug used to boil coffee on an open fire. Yep. How did this item work? Well, you ground up your beans in the bottom of your skillet with the butt of your pistol, unless you had a fancy coffee grinder, and you got a handful of beans and you threw them in the pot and you filled the pot with water and you put it on the fire and you called it coffee. How did it work? Well, when I was a young boy, actually, I wasn't even a young man yet. I was very familiar with older coffee pots and teapots because my parents were antique dealers and they dealt in they were antiquers who specialized in teapots and coffee pots, and the finer coffee pots had finer plates inside the lip, punch full of holes. And the finer, more expensive ones had more holes that were littler and did a better job. And they caught most of the big chunks. And the little bits that got through, well, they generally settled in the bottom of the pot, which is why you never wanted the last cup, because you could stand the spoon. And kept it out of your mouth. Now, what the hell boiling coffee's got to do, but, hey, I had an answer. They did grind the beans. But, hey, they weren't wussies either. They needed their cup of joe. Well, they didn't call it joe back then. They needed their cuppa. Well, they didn't call it a cuppa. They needed their coffee. Coffee was a big deal during the American Civil War. During lapses of open hostilities, the troops that had coffee, Union, would trade with troops that had tobacco, Confederate, and a lively trade went on in many instances. Could it have been gritty? Yeah, but hey, if you're a cowboy out punching cows, you're going to complain about a little grit. Have I ever had coffee made that way? I don't like coffee. I haven't drunk coffee since I was overseas. Now, I make coffee every morning for my wife. And I even make cappuccino for my wife when she wants it. And I make it very well. I just don't like to drink it. I learned to make it when I was working in restaurants when I was still in high school. I learned to make it by smell. I know a good cup of coffee by its smell. I know when it's been on too long. I know when it's been reheated too long. What can I tell you? I have a lot of things I cook and make. I know by smell. But seriously, supplies. How do you work supplies and shopping into your campaign? Well, supplies, I try to not get into the itty-bittiest nitty-gritty of supplies. If you show me that you have 30 pounds of tea leaves, dried mushrooms, whatever it is you're taking with to eat or smoke or whatever. Okay, that's normal. That's normal. Just a minute, getting a little dry. No, encumbrance. And unless they know in advance that they're going to a particularly cold environment and therefore should bring furs, or a particularly hot environment and therefore should bring minimalist clothing, it's going to be standard stuff: tallow, oil, rope, canvas. I don't care. I have a thing in the games I run called the Wheel of Flame, and before the game, people can write down any damn thing they want on the side of the sheet that they're bringing with them. I've had people bring a crock of butter and spices, and they cook some shit. And I've had them bring skillets and all kinds of weird crap. And then when they pull out and say, I'm going to hit him with my skillet, if it's written on the sheet, they hit him with the skillet. So that kind of crud stuff, you don't have to break down the iron. What are your iron rations? They're iron rations. I don't care if you like suet tubes or chewy beef sticks. I don't care. They're iron rations for however how many days you say they're supposed to last. Do I get into how long does the food last? Most of the time, no. If you're at all competent and you're out in the wild, you got to be able to kill something and eat it. Or, how the hell did you get this competent? How'd you get to the level you are now today? Shopping. In-game can be fun. No, it's not. It's a bit of a drag. Yep, you're right. Is a shopping side quest an opportunity for DMs to keep things on track for our adventure by introducing hook elements such as NPCs of note or information pertaining to adventure? Or is it better to just let the players have a shopping spree and chalk it up to role-playing R&R? I don't know. I don't have a good clue answer on that. If you got a group that wants to pretend they're going to the Kroger store or Whole Foods or Fresh Market or wherever the hell they're going, if that's what they want to do, let them go. I won't. Every group likes to do different things. Now, back in the day, way back in the day, there was a peddler that showed up every once in a while. His wagon and his brightly painted wagon and his two donkeys. They were also brightly colored. And he would have occasional magic items. And it was just a device I used to clean the money out of the campaign. So, how you let them go shopping. They would come back then. They would come up with a list, and I tell them. I finally had to tell them you can't have more than 10, 12 things on the list. Period. Because I'm not going to sit here and listen to you read off 37 items you're looking for. Give me the 10 that you're most looking for, and I'll tell you if he's got them. And if it's common, ordinary stuff, probably does. If it's weird off-the-wall stuff, maybe not. But maybe you can find an opportunity if he doesn't have some kind of fungus or some other plant that you know how to find or you can find. You have a market to sell it. Another way to make money. I really didn't have any problem with different ways that players came up with making money and spending money. They're pretty novel in some cases. But Bonus question, what is the coffee in my D&D world? There is no coffee in my D&D world. I don't provide it. I don't have brewing instructions. I have cure spells, which I look at as Red Bulls. There is such a thing in my world as the universal antidote, but sometimes that's just a myth. They've been found over the years a couple of times. I don't have a mandatory drink. If that's a level of detail that holds very little interest for me. Now, having said that, if you're outdoor adventuring and someone falls ill with a malady, and on that sheet of paper you've written down that you have crushed fever leaves and rot knot berries and whatever, bingo. By the way, what's going on with my Patreon? Well, I had about a 12-minute video made up, and then I somehow corrupted it on my phone. Now I have a camera. So I'm planning one of these days, when it's not so awful to look at in my basement, in my cellar, I'm planning to remake that video. And I'm open to the Patreon subscribers sending me private messages on what they think or would like to see. Because I really do appreciate you guys. I like the idea of starting a campaign out with the character frontal. Quantity 4, 0 level commoner players. Only those that survive the intro adventure become a level 1 PCs. It normalizes players to character loss from the jump. Are there any additions from recent RPGs that you think are clever ideas to try out or implement into a campaign or a session you wanted to run? Yeah, the character funnel is a great idea, and it's especially a good way to get a bunch of newbies into the game, because get that callus built up right away as one character after another dies, as long as they're having fun. Okay, I like the funnel idea. I like Duck Quest is an interesting game. And I like their requirement that when you bring a new character to the table, your backstory cannot be more than 3 sentences. And they have to be legitimate sentences, no 35-word sentences. I like that idea. I don't like the idea of coming to the game already invested in this character that you've made up and wrote a backstory on and whatever. Writing backstories. I'm going to take a note here, because I got something I'm going to talk about later, and backstories work into that. Hang on, I'm coming. Okay, I'll talk about that in a little while, however long it takes me to get to the next two pages. I like the idea of I don't like the idea of getting attached to a player character right away, deeply involved, and writing 150 word, 300 word, whatever backstory does that from the get-go, and I think that's not healthy. Okay, let's see what we got going here next. I have several pages. I never give the players a story as to how they met. They tell me that. I'll work around it some, but I also don't like backstories, or at least the 4 to 8 pages that 5e players think are backstories. Oh God, yeah. If you tell me that you're all from the same village or met on a previous work project or whatever, that's cool. That's a big story you get. 2 to 3 sentences. And yeah, he just noticed that as he was writing that, I apparently had said it earlier. Where he stole it. Well, you might have heard it from me. Anyway, it comes from Duck Quest. I'm not making a backstory where all you princes who are mopey edgelords are the rightful heir to several crowns, just no one knows it yet. Call a 5e DM for that backstory. Yeah. As for NPC plot armor, anytime you show an NPC to a group, there's a chance they kill him. Huh? What? Now, I immediately am questioning that because there's an NPC and there's a, as defined by role-playing, monster, anybody opposed to or not actively aligned with the player characters. I wouldn't. I would flat not tolerate. If I put an NPC in there, there's a reason that he's there. He's either going to screw with them, or he's going to help them, or he's just going to provide guidance once in a while, or maybe the occasional cure spell. I don't know. Depends on the NPC. But kill him? Oh, man, that goes against the whole grain of cooperative role play. In my mind, that goes against the spirit entirely. All right. You only have to play about 3 games to figure that out, so if you want to toss a big bat at them, know they might kill him. You have either 2 options. Either allow them to see and hear about the big bad, whispers from the bandits, signals on the cave wall or evil tower, etc., or you have to be flexible. If Bad Bart is your planned big bad and they figured it out early and kill him, then Bad Bart wasn't the real big bad after all. He was a puppet of the Black Witch. And if they track her down too quickly, she wasn't really it. She was a lieutenant to the demon Bertelblug. It's easy when I get to write my own script. Yeah, but you shouldn't, in my opinion, I'm not there to write the script. I'm there to provide plot elements and let them deal with them. How they work them out. Whether they avoid them. Whether they ignore them. Now, I agree that you can always keep adding somebody that somebody else worked for. Especially in the event if the players just get stupid lucky. Nothing like crushing their little hopes. Oh, you thought it was over? And having the blue bolt come crashing through the ceiling and sear them all for a half a dozen hit points. And send them fleeing out the door, wondering who they pissed off. You can always add more. If they do it too easily, you probably made it too easy to begin with. Now, I'm not disallowing the genius insight that can occur in a situation when you're role-playing. Somebody just out of nowhere comes up with, I think it's because the key needs to be turned the other direction twice. whatever it was they come up with. I'll get more on that in a minute. Before WotC took over D&D, rolling to hit in combat included many steps. The player rolled a d20 and added modifiers. Then they consulted an attack matrix, looking for their character's level, and then looked up the resulting armor class they can hit. Finally, they would compare that result with the armor class of the monster. Many people these days think that's too slow and confusing to do during a game. What did you do back in the day when rolling to hit? Did you look at everything in the attack matrix? Did you memorize the matrix yourself? Do you have a faster workaround you used instead? What do you think about people saying it was slow and confusing? Also, what system to hit during combat do you use these days? Okay, combat. Love it, love it, love it, love it. We use Thaco. We knew Thaco. Thaco started out as a creative tool. And I'll give you an example. I have these really exotic, fancy character sheets that I did up for my high-level NPCs that I'm letting the people in Okinawa choose from. And on their sheets, I have given them, I gotta see if you can, don't want to fade this out. I've given them all their saving throws. Right there. They're all listed there. So they know their saving throws. I've given them a listing of on this one it's called panoply. I used other fancy words on other sheets. But the armor is there, the class, the net that takes into account anything else like this character's agility or constitution or anything of that kind of nature gets worked into the net. And then if there's a shield involved, then its addition to the net is indicated. Okay, this individual has a mail shirt that's armor class 4 with a net armor class of 4. He also has a poison shield, which is a -1 shield, which gives a net armor class of 3. Then on the weapons, okay, this is a hobbit with a staff sling. +3 to hit. Okay, he knows his Thaco because I've written it right here on the board. Thaco 14 and 10 for his 2 weapons. The better, more vicious weapon has the better Thaco. But that's how I do it now. That's how I'll be doing it in the future with this particular campaign. Roll a die, roll a 20. What'd you get? 17. And it's up to the player to add all these. You know, he might have rolled a 13, but he's got 4 pluses, so he tells me, what'd you net? 17. You hit. Roll for damage. Easy peasy. I say that, and I know at the same time that I feel that way because I've been doing it for so long. But I still have not found a better way than utilizing Thaco. If you know your character's Thaco, okay, you meet something new. Describe this great big feathery thing that has 4 eyeballs on stalks. And you know that your Thaco, 2 hit armor class 0, is 14. And you roll a 16, and you don't hit. You immediately know that your target is better armored than 0. zero armor. So it probably is enchanted or some other reason. That's what made Thaco so easy. You ran into something you didn't know, you hit it, okay, you hit it on 11, you hit it on a 9, whatever. You rolled 17s 3 times and hit it 3 times, rolled 12s and missed. Okay, you can figure out what it is. Because not every goddamn player, character, knew the monster manual inside out and upside down. So when you give them something new that you've created, let them figure out what it is the hard way. Okay, now we have a rant. And I think this must be in response to my comments about somebody ruining things. And it goes on. Disney paid $4 billion for Lucasfilm in 2012, adjusted for inflation $5.6 billion, and has made $12 billion or $6.4 billion profit. Let's ignore the Star Wars hotel fiasco costing them $400 million. We can also ignore the extremely poor handling of Star Wars to the point where they had to quit making Star Wars movies because they finally pissed off the fan base to the point where Han Solo movie lost money. From the piss-poor writing and always shoehorning a woman in for each and every possible character to the detriment of the film, to Star Wars becoming a literal joke meme in South Park. Put a chick in it, make her lame and make her gay. As they had Cartman be Catherine Kennedy. Disney has attempted to put out good content, apparently, and/or was a good TV show. Note, they can't risk making movies because they lost the fan base to support a movie, and no one will see it. You go to Ollie's, Ollie's Discounts, love it, great things cheap, great stuff cheap. And you see massive dumps of Hasbro's Star Wars toys because Disney put Hasbro under contract, so they have to produce toys for a non-existent market. The profit in Star Wars is getting little boys to buy the toys. Well, now kids hate Star Wars, and the only people buying Star Wars are 50 plus with fond memories. Disney went racist to hide Finn in China because he's black. The movie was pulled from China in 10 days due to no one wanting to see the slop. I mean, my God, they literally turned Princess Leia into frickin' Mary Poppins, having her fly through the void of space as her ship was destroyed. At that point, I stepped out of the theater that was jam-packed with 5 other moviegoers 2 weeks after the release on a Saturday in disgust. Yeah, they ham-hocked it up, much like Hasbro has done with D&D. Thought they knew better, didn't think they needed to listen to anybody that was involved in it or that was devoted. No study groups, no nothing. Stupid. Disney made its money on Star Wars, but they can't generate any more money from it. They've destroyed the IP and they have no idea how to bring it back. They're screwed. Disney had to release its financial release that Disney's morale values don't align with its audience. Disney isn't a company, it's a race Marxist entity trying to spread its religion at the cost of destroying IP until people won't watch it anymore. Well, that seems a little harsh. They literally tried to replace Indiana Jones in canon by a woman going back in time taking his hat, and that would be okay. Okay, good luck, Disney. Sold my stock from Disney after the second Star Wars sequel. Best thing I did financially for me. Okay, well, there's a chapter and verse of how Disney, in this individual's opinion, has destroyed Star Wars. And I won't dispute it, because how anybody could kill that cash cow is beyond my comprehension. How Hasbro could kill that cash cow is beyond my imagination or my comprehension. The arrogance that they knew better than what all the players that were vocal about it we're telling them no. Hasbro deserves to lose their ass for being stupid and willful. Those of us who love the game, have our books and dice and everything already, we don't need Hasbro. Screw Hasbro. I'll just keep playing my books until they fall apart, or I do. Easy peasy, done. Okay, referencing back to when I was talking about backstories. I'm starting up, I always call them a campaign. It's however long it takes to complete an adventure that was set out upon. I'm starting one to run once a month with the Seven Winds people in Okinawa. I sent them my super duper pre-gens to select. Unfortunately, at this point in time, I cannot find the backstories that I wrote for those pre-gens. And I did. I wrote them probably a page each. And researched the names that I gave them and really dove into them. Because at the time, I thought I was putting together a commercial product of NPCs, a stable of NPCs. But that didn't work out. I'll find them, I hope, on the other hard drive over here. My buddy's coming tomorrow. We're going to pull it out and put it in some kind of box and USB plug it, and I'm going to go in and look for shit. I'm pumped. I'm chuffed. Because I haven't run anything continuous in forever. I've never run. I'm going to run one of the two Lost Adventures of Gary Kahn. I haven't decided which one yet myself. I'm going to spend time that isn't trying to cram it all into a 4-hour convention adventure, a 4-hour convention session. So I'm pumped about it. We'll, freeze time when our time is up for playing. We'll stop time just like we did in the old days. And the party will be responsible for keeping an accurate map. And if they don't, well, they'll have trouble finding a way around on the second time. But we're gonna go from front to back, the whole thing that I wrote. And we'll spend more time and not rush through some of the... I gotta admit, both of those got a couple of bristly bits that are... They're going to be bristly. Well, yeah, bristly as in don't piss off the porcupine bristly. It should be fun. I've played with these people now over a dozen times. We all have to play by the honesty honor system. I can't see their die rolls. They can't see mine. But they know I'm not going to cheat them. And I know they're not going to cheat me. They can't cheat me. All they can do is cheat themselves. So as a DM, you never have to worry. Who cares if they cheat? If you figure out and catch them cheating, then give them a dose of their own medicine. Oh, you thought that big son of a bitch over the hill was a 12th level? Or it had 80 hit points? No, it had 156. You can always box a cheater in. But again, I don't look for, and none of these people are going to cheat. Because they all know they're only going to cheat themselves. The whole point in role-playing, we don't win in role-playing. Unlike what Chevy Chase said in the Parks and Recreation, you don't win. You succeed. But then you come back and you play again next week. As for the backstories of this time, I'm just going to have to tell them that I wrote them up as being members of a select group of adventurers. So the syndicate of which they are part has been paid a very big retainer to go do this thing. So that's all the backstory I need. They're all pre-gens. Now, if they're all bringing brand new characters to that, oh, hell yeah, we could all spend an hour sipping tea and eating cakes and tell each other our backstory. I haven't had anything where I needed to know a backstory for 30 years. Ye will 25. And I guess on that note, I will say, and what's Gen Con's going on right now as I make this. And I've seen the pictures. And the 6-block long line for badge pickup and the mobs. And I only miss the energy. I haven't gone for several years now. I do not miss the rest. The crush. The mob herd mentality. The crush. But hey, if you're there and you're having a good time, or you went and you had a good time, and when you see this, great. Wonderful. Gen Con used to be the highlight of my life many, many years ago. Have a good time. And until then, Dildada Gobi. Hello, and welcome to my cellar.
The curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Last man around when them rates went down. Called it Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine. He's a curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. PSR and fantasy, collection of micro armory, Titan with tramp under a tree, high as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon.